Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome to class. Today we'll talk about a very significant and important manifestation of a bilingual mind, a multilingual mind, where the individual speaker has ability to mix and switch to from one code to other code. So the bilingual speaker can either mix the two codes, two languages, or frequently can switch from one language to other language. What is this phenomenon called, and why the bilingual does it? What is the implication for it and of it as well? And what are the social linguistic implications of mixing the languages or switching from one language to other? What are the circumstances in which we do? What is the motivation behind it? What is the function of it? And what objective does the speaker obtain or get out of such acts? So this phenomenon is called code mixing, right? Mixing happens in a bilingual situation or a multilingual situation. And if you look at India as a linguistic area, here we have scores of languages and a very frequent mixing of languages. We have a continuous sustained contact among languages, and it's very difficult to draw clear linguistic boundary, because in this Indian linguistic ecology, these languages have survived for hundreds of years of their contact, interaction and sharing. So mixing is a very natural, normal phenomena, specifically when we look at Indian context. And we have lots of examples in everyday conversation where, as a speaker, at times we are not even aware of mixing of languages, right? So I am speaking Hindi, for example, and I may draw words, phrases, idioms and other lexical items from other languages. And this is quite a normal phenomenon. It happens with all languages. Given English as a very significant and important language in the linguistic ecology of India, this is also our associate official language constitutionally. So we find a very frequent mix of Hindi and English, English and Punjabi, English and Tamil, English and Telugu, English and Marathi, English and Bangla. So English mixes with majority of Indian languages and almost all Indian languages so frequently and so easily that sometimes English expressions are not noticed. Expressions like file, road, highway, words like building, right? Technology, science. So these are all English words, but they all mix with other Indian languages so beautifully and so naturally that the speaker or the listener hardly notice, right, that two languages are being mixed. But what is the pattern of mixing, right? How it happens, and what is this phenomenon all about? Right? We'll talk about all these things today in this class. So this phenomenon is called code mixing, and another phenomenon is called code switching. So, code mixing and code switching are a beautiful manifestation of a bilingual mind, and it is very common, natural, and frequent, right? So, today we are going to talk about code mixing and code switching. So, bilingual speakers who have two languages at their disposal, who have access to two linguistic resources, uh, they tend to mix lexical items, words, phrases, clauses, and sentences during their conversation. Sometimes it happens spontaneously for maximum communicability, and sometimes it is deliberate and volitional. But this is a quite normal, frequent phenomena. So, they mix the codes, two languages, or they switch from one code to the other code according to the situation, the context of conversation, setting, the topic they are talking about, themes they are discussing, and other various factors. So, for mixing and switching, there are multiple factors which are responsible. So, code mixing and code switching are very frequent and common modes of interaction among bilingual speakers or multilingual speakers, and particularly in Indian context, it is a very frequent and prolific phenomenon. So, code mixing and code switching are creative outcome of a bilingual mind. Why we call it creative outcome? Right? I will talk about it just now, and it is a very creative outcome where the speaker or the user of language has ability to draw from two distinct linguistic sources to encode the message and communicate effectively. So, they use two or more distinct linguistic systems to create an effective code for maximum communicability, right? And it is sometimes spontaneous and sometimes deliberate. So, do it deliberately. The goal is maximum communicability, right? And how beautifully and creatively it is mixed to communicate the maximum message. You might have been familiar with so many Bollywood songs, and you can see in these songs lots of English words are mixed. What is the purpose? Look at this song, right? Bhatia, Tej Ke Bhatia, gives an example of Crazy Kiya Re, a very famous Bollywood song, Crazy Kiya Re. Now, the word crazy, it's not the case that crazy does not have any equivalent in Hindi or Urdu. There are many equivalents of crazy. But what is the purpose of using crazy in the song? It immediately connects with the target audience, the youth. It strikes the right chord with them. And the word crazy has a very wide semantic shade, and it quickly connects your target audience. You may have other equivalents of it. It could have been replaced by Diwana, Pagal, whatever. But deliberate attempt to put that word in the line, and you can take many examples of such kind, right, where a deliberate attempt is made to insert a word or a phrase, Kolavaridi, right, song, very famous song, Kolavaridi, you may be familiar, and it resonates with the aspirations of the youth. It connects with the young generation very quickly, right. So, this hybridity, this mixing has lots of implications. It's not simply that something is missing and that's why you borrow it from the other language, right? There may be two positions. When we talk about mixing, when we talk about mixing two languages, there may be two positions. One, because language A lacks certain expressions, concepts and ideas, you have to borrow it from language B and you use those terms in language A. That means language A has certain deficit of expressions, and that's why it is compensated from language B. There may be one argument for this, but the research shows, and there are scholars who go for augmentation hypothesis. That means language A and language B are augmented. So the user or the speaker has two rich linguistic sources to draw from. So the ultimate goal of language is to communicate, achieved by augmenting these two linguistic sources and getting the best out of it. So it's a very natural phenomena, and there are multiple factors why we mix, why we switch. We'll come to that later, but right now we'll try to understand the pattern and the phenomena of mixing, right? So code mixing and code switching are creative outcomes, right? And interference on discourse level is known as code switching. That means sentence is taken as a unit. So when we insert or when we put expressions, words, phrases, clauses from one language to the other language. So when language A and language B, L1 and L2. So L1, in L1 structure, you mix, or you bring in expressions, words, clauses, sentence, clauses, not sentences, clauses, expressions, words, and mix it in L1. So it happens at sentence level. So within a sentence, right? Example, morning में highway पे accident हो गया. Let's take this Hindi example. Morning में highway पे accident हो गया. आज highway पे accident हो गया. Now, highway is an English word and accident English word. आज highway पे accident हो गया. It's a very spontaneous normal sentence for a Hindi speaker who knows both English and Hindi as well. If you look for Hindi sentence, Hindi equivalent for these two words, highway means Rajmarg and accidents Durghatna. So we say आज राजमार्ग पे दुर्घटना हो गई. Now this looks very artificial sentence because a bilingual speaker, Hindi and English bilingual speaker, now finds it very awkward and marked sentence when they say आज राजमार्ग पे दुर्घटना हो गई. For pun, for satire, you can use these words. For humor, you can use these words. दुर्घटना, highway, विद्यालय, आज मैं विद्यालय जा रहा हूँ. I mean, I'm going to school. आज मैं स्कूल जा रहा हूँ. आज स्कूल बंद है. School closed. Very frequent mixing. And if you try to replace all these English words, park, train, road, building, all these words from equivalent Hindi words, the sentence looks artificial, right? So mixing is a very productive and a natural phenomenon. It will happen, it happens, it keep on happening. So the difference between mixing and switching is that mixing happens within the sentence. So, at the level of sentence. So, sentence is taken as a unit, and a sentence of L1 or language A, and we insert or mix or bring in words, lexical items, expressions and clauses from language B, L2. So, L2 and L1 are mixed. But if it happens beyond sentence, like not between the sentences, but the whole sentence is replaced by a sentence from language B in an extended conversation, right? A whole sentence is replaced. That means you switch from L1 to L2. You switch from language A to language B, and you come back again. So, this oscillation happens, going to language B and then coming back to language 1, and then so you are going forward and coming back to the L1, then going forward, coming back to the L1. This happens beyond the sentence level, and this is called switching. So, if mixing happens above sentence level, at discourse level, where certain chunks or sentences, utterances are in language B and rest are in language A, you are switching from language A to B, right? And this is the difference between mixing and switching. So, mixing happens intrasentential, within the sentence. You bring in isolated words, loan words, isolated words, you insert words. Sometimes you bring in an entire phrase or a clause, but it happens between two full stops. So, intrasentential. Then it is mixing, but the structure remains of language A. Items can be borrowed and brought in from language B, and it happens at sentential level before the full stop. But what if the whole sentence is replaced? So, you have 2-3 sentences from language A, then you have 2-3 sentences from language B, and vice versa. Then that is called switching. So, that is the difference. Otherwise, both are mixing. If you look at mixing broadly, you are mixing two languages, but the pattern of mixing, at one place you are bringing in lexical items within the sentence. At the other level, you are replacing the whole sentence with a sentence from language B. So, you are replacing the whole sentence. So, that is switching. So, mixing and switching, right? And this code mixing and switching happens in a bilingual context, in a multilingual context, right? There are many people who have defined, I am not going to tell you the list of researchers and the scholars who have tried to define and describe this phenomena, but of course, there are certain names that must be mentioned here, like Weinreich, 1953. He described bilingualism as the practice of alternately using two languages, right? So, a bilingual and a bilingual, whether he is a coordinate bilingual or a compound bilingual, right, or early bilingual, late bilingual, whatever type of bilingual the person is, depending on the efficacy to use two languages and have access to two languages without any problem. This tendency will be more in such cases where bilinguals have access to two different linguistic sources, and they have capacity or capability to alternately switch or mix two languages, right? So, code mixing and code switching are stable and well studied linguistic phenomenon of multilingual or bilingual societies. And if you look at the emergence of social linguistics, modern social linguistics, what we talk about post 1950s, this phenomena started getting attention of scholars in the field in 60s onwards, and a lot of work have been done in that, right? John Gumperz, another scholar, he says code switching is just a juxtaposition within the same speech exchange of passage of a speech belonging to two different grammatical systems or subsystems. So, he is talking about how two structures are juxtaposed to each other, right, creatively. Myers and Scotton, for that matter, in 1993-2002, they say code mixing refers to embedding of linguistic units such as phrases, words and morphemes of one language into the utterances of another language. The same thing that we are talking about, right. So many scholars have talked about it, and I am not going to repeat by reading the quotes from their work, but that is a phenomena where a bilingual mind is creatively expressed in terms of mixing of two codes, and the reason that the bilingual mind has access to two rich linguistic sources to draw from, and why it happens? For maximum communicability. So, we have to keep that in mind, right. Another thing that we have to keep in mind is mixing happens within a sentence, so intrasentential, and switching happens beyond sentence at discourse level. So, in an extended conversation, you switch from one language to the other language. So, few sentences in one language, right, and few sentences are brought in from another language, right. So, that is the choice of the bilingual speaker or multilingual speaker, depending on the setting and the situation, and and the pragmatic need to do so. Okay, then moving on, Wenrich 1968 described ideal bilingual as one who switches from one language to the other according to appropriate changes in speech, situation, but not in an unchanged speech situation, and certainly not within single sentence, right. These are different theoretical descriptions that people have come up with. Now, if you look at the patterns of mixing, how do we mix, right? There is no definite description of how we should mix, but if you look at the larger sample, right, and the way people mix, bilingual speakers, multilingual speakers mix, we can arrive at certain patterns, and works like Wei, Te, Muskin, and other people, Wenrich, Gumperz, they have tried to look at these patterns, and the literature suggests three important aspects in the patterns of mixing within a sentence. And what is that? Number one, insertion. Number two, alternation, and number three, congruent lexicalization. So, there are three patterns over a larger size chunk of data. When we look at, we find these three patterns of mixing: insertion, alternation, and congruent lexicalization. What are these? We will come in a while, right. So, let us look at insertion. That is a very frequent and frequently found and largely done by the bilingual speakers. So, as the word suggests, certain items are inserted, certain items from, let us say, language B are inserted in the structure of language A. What are the certain items? It can be a noun, it can be an adjective, right, any lexical item. So they are positioned in situ in the structure, and you get a mixed hybrid variety, right? A hybrid sentence. So something like I just talked about, आज हाईवे पर एक्सीडेंट हो गया. Highway and accident are English words. The sentence is a Hindi sentence. आज हाईवे पे accident हो गया. Sentence is Hindi sentence. But we have two words. One is highway and the other is accident. Right? आज हाईवे पे accident हो गया. So we have inserted highway. We could have replaced it by original Hindi word Rajmarg and एक accident. Accident, that is दुर्घटना, right? So आज हाईवे पे एक्सीडेंट हो गया. So some accident happened or an accident happened on the highway. Insertion, right, where I have inserted two English words in the Hindi structure, right? Accident, you can insert more words in the same sentence, like आज मॉर्निंग में हाईवे पे एक एक्सीडेंट हो गया, राइट? आज मॉर्निंग में हाईवे पे एक एक्सीडेंट हो गया, राइट? सो usually open class words are frequently inserted. Open class words like noun, right? So nominal categories and all nouns, adjectives. But closed class words are not so frequently inserted, right? Like preposition, right? Like interjection, like adverbs. So closed class words are not inserted so frequently the way we insert open class words, adjectives, nouns. They're frequently inserted. The notion of insertion according to Muskin corresponds to what Klein terms as transference, and the same idea is referred to as embedding by Mayer and Scotton. So it can be embedding, transference or insertion, all the same, where you bring in words and lexical items from language B and insert it in language A, and that happens within the sentence. All right. The second pattern is alternation. So you alter, right? Alternation occurs when a structure of two languages are alternated indistinctively, right, both at the grammatical and lexical level. So there are certain grammatical units which undergo a certain change. You alter it. How do you do that? Let's have an example. Heat के कारण tired feel कर रहा हूँ. It's a Hindi sentence with alternations from English. So heat के कारण tired feel कर रहा हूँ. Feel करना, right? To feel in English. So feel करना is a Hindi compound verb, right? To feel, right? If you go for the equivalent of feel करना in Hindi, that is महसूस करना, right? So heat के कारण, heat, temperature, right? Because of temperature, tired feel कर रहा हूँ. I am feeling tired, exhausted. So temperature के कारण I am feeling exhausted or tired, right? So heat के कारण, right? Because of heat, tired feel कर रहा हूँ. Feeling tired because of heat. I am feeling tired because of heat, right? Now look at this compound verb, feel करना, right? So this is called alternation, where a structure of two languages are alternated indistinctively both at the grammatical and lexical level. So you are making a compound verb, Hindi compound verb, by mixing feel as the content word, right, and the other word is karna, do, feel karna, right. The third pattern is called congruent lexicalization. What is that? So, congruent lexicalization refers to the situation where two languages share grammatical structures which can be filled lexically with elements from either language. Let us look at the sentence. For example, ये चपातीज कच्ची हैं. Chapatis, roti, right? The bread. ये चपातीज कच्ची हैं. Chapati is a Hindi word, but look at the plural marker with it, S. So, the grammatical item S, which is a plural marker, is of English, chapatis, right? ये रोटियां ठंडी हैं, कच्ची हैं, right? Half cooked, not properly cooked, raw. फाइलों को डाउनलोड करके सेव कर लो. इट्स अ वेरी कॉमन इंस्ट्रक्शन. फाइलों को डाउनलोड करके सेव कर लो. फाइलों को, फाइल इज एन इंग्लिश वर्ड, बट इफ यू लुक एट द केस मार्कर, फाइलों को, राइट, फाइलों को. सो लुक एट दिस केस मार्कर, फाइल्स. सो फाइलों को डाउनलोड करके सेव कर लो, राइट. सेव करना अगेन अ कंपाउंड वर्ब, डाउनलोड करना अगेन अ कंपाउंड वर्ब, एंड लुक एट द केस मार्किंग ऑन द वर्ड फाइल, फाइलों को, राइट. सो बिल्डिंगों में, बिल्डिंग, बिल्डिंगों में, कंप्यूटरों में, कंप्यूटरों को, कंप्यूटर प्लस look at the case marker, right. It's a very frequent phenomenon, and after an extent, because they are used so frequently that we stop even noticing them, right. It's a very frequent and productive phenomenon, and we stop noticing them. So, if you look at this mixing of codes or switching of codes, why we call it a creative manifestation of bilingual mind? Because the ultimate goal of communication of language is to communicate. The function of language is to communicate, and in order to make it maximum communicable and encode the message effectively, a bilingual mind or a bilingual speaker has tendency of mixing, right. And there are two arguments for such phenomena. One is called deficit hypothesis, where we believe that because the speaker lacks equivalent in language X, he or she borrows from language Y and mixes it. So this mixing happens because of lack of availability of appropriate expression. But the other argument, which is augmentation hypothesis, that says that no, it's not the deficit in one language which forces the user to bring in items from other language, but it is augmentation. The speaker has free will, and the speaker has ability to use two distinct linguistic sources, and he draws from these to make the sentence or the expression rich and effective, which meets the communication goals. So the second hypothesis has some merit, because mixing is not sometimes a deliberate attempt, because as a bilingual or as a multilingual, it becomes such a spontaneous habit or tendency that we sometimes don't even notice that we are doing it at the both the level, speaker and listener as well, right. So, what is important is flow of information, uninterrupted flow of information, right? And for that, there are multiple reasons you can talk about why people mix. For example, suppose I am talking about certain taboo theme, taboo words. Now, taboo words are usually borrowed from other language and deliberately mixed, because we don't want to talk about taboo words in public, but we feel comfortable by bringing in the same equivalent word from other language. It may be inhibition in language A that forces me to buy or to bring in a word or expression from language B, right? Sometimes the topic also determines that I'm bringing and mixing from code B. In Indian context, for example, the educated Indian, if he or she is talking about some serious topic, maybe intellectual, that demands intellectual sound background, or to reflect that you are intellectually capable of discussing it, we frequently bring in those expressions. Sometimes, because your training and education and your background in that particular theme and topic is in English, even if you are talking in Tamil, you will bring in lots of English expressions to express that you are familiar with this idea. And sometimes you may not get the Tamil equivalent or Hindi equivalent or Marathi equivalent or Punjabi equivalent of those concepts, and you prefer to use English, right? So, this hybridity is quite normal, natural and frequent. It is not an unmarked thing, it is a very marked thing, right. So, quickly we will recapitulate what we learned today, that code mixing and code switching are creative outcome of a bilingual or multilingual mind, number one. What we can deduct further, code mixing and code switching are very common phenomena, right, in any bilingual or multilingual society, and specifically in India, it is a very normal natural phenomenon. It is not only about Tamil and English, it can be Tamil and Kannada, Tamil and Marathi, Tamil and Hindi. So many Hindi words, so many other expressions are mixed in language A from language B. It is very, very frequent thing. And then there is a pattern of mixing. This mixing can happen within a sentence or sometimes at discourse level, within a discourse. So, when it happens within a sentence between two full stops, it is called code mixing, intrasentential. And when it happens beyond the sentence, where at discourse level you have certain chunks in language B, certain in language A, and you oscillate, you mix, go for forward and backward, use language 1, then switch to language 2, then go to language 1 again, switch to language 2 again. This happens. There are certain identity issues involved, right. Sometimes you want to express your solidarity with the speakers. So, you bring in deliberately, you bring in those words and those expressions from the other language, their language. So, there are multiple factors. In some other class, we will talk about what are the factors and social factors, political factors, linguistic factors which force us to mix, or which prompt us to mix, or which inspire us to mix, right. Not always forcing, but we are inspired to mix. Sometimes it demands to mix. So, we will talk about all these things and the socio-linguistic aspect of mixing and switching in other class. But for this class, let us summarize that code mixing and code switching are a very natural, normal phenomena. It is a beautiful creative outcome of a bilingual or multilingual mind. There are multiple factors which allow us to mix and switch. There are patterns, certain patterns in which we mix, patterns like insertion, patterns like alternation, patterns like lexical congruity, right, congruent lexicalization. So these are the patterns, and you can look at your own style of speaking, look at others, style of speaking, people around you, and try to see their tendency of mixing. Try to see when they mix, try to see why they mix, try to see what objective they have in mixing, try to see what do they get out of it, try to see how does it affect you, try to see how you relate to them, right? So this is it for now. Thank you very much.